was like, I'm gonna try and translate everything that I can.
I love the work that you put in.
I'm not playing when it comes to Charly García.
Preparation is key.
He's my background.
Is he actually?
He is.
No way. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Rest in Place podcast. I'm Dapo Agiri and I'm very pleased to be joined by my friend Lautaro Sapienza. How are you? Oh,
I'm good, thank you.
Is that the audience clapping?
Yeah, that's my audience. Yeah.
I'll edit in some cheers.
Please. I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for joining me. Me and Lauti met when I was in Argentina.
Yes,
Lauti has never heard me speak a word of Spanish, so
no. I think you said all at once.
This will be the most Spanish, but it will just be me reading typing.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do next.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this one because I think today I'm just going to get to like sit back and enjoy it. No pressure or anything. But Lauti is brought on one of his favourite albums from one of his favourite artists. It's between, from my perception, it's between this artist and Taylor Swift. So
I think
the battle of your kind of...
I was thinking about this a few days ago, and I was like, if I would only have to pick one artist to only listen for the rest of my life, I think I would pick this artist.
Really?
Over Taylor Swift.
Okay, that's a big claim because
it is.
Lauti is a massive Swiftie. So that means a lot. That carries a lot of weight. So without any further ado, I just want to jump straight in. Can you let the people at home know who this artist is and what album you've chosen as your final Rest in Place album?
Yes, so the artist is Carlos Alberto García Moreno.
Oh, full names only.
Better known as Charly García. And the album is Clics Modernos, or Modern Clics.
An amazing album. This is something that was new to me. I think I mentioned to you I'm doing a kind of deep dive into albums from like around to the world. And this was maybe like 2-3 months ago. I stumbled across Charly García, and again, kind of similar to what we were saying about League of Legends. Had no idea that this man was so famous and had such a following. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose this album, and kind of maybe before that, give a bit of an insight into Charly García as an artist, as a person, and kind of what you mean?
Sure. So Charly García was born 73 years ago. Mm-hmm. On the, I think, 25th of October, if I remember correctly. So his birthday was recently. So he was born in 1951. Yeah. And he basically, when he was a child, he was like a prodigy at piano. Like he had a toy piano that his mom got him when he was around like 4 or 5 years old. And then like one day he was playing, and then like the mom was looking at him, and she thought like, why are you just composing music? You're like 4 years old. Calm down. So then they took him to basically a school to learn piano, and he became a piano teacher and music teacher at 12.
Mm-hmm. At 12?
At 12 years old.
What?
And he also has perfect pitch.
Oh, yeah. So
that I think that also helped.
Yeah, it would.
So then he formed his first band with a guy he met at school called Nito Mestre, who is also referenced now as one of the fathers of rock, next to Charly García. And they formed a first band. I think they played for like 2 or 3 years. They dissolved the group around 1975 with a massive concert in one of the, at that moment, biggest stadiums an artist could play. That was Luna Park.
Oh, yes.
That basically Luna Park was first a boxing stadium. So it was like it didn't host artistic like performances. And they sold it out to 2,000 people, which at the time was insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
So the group was called Sui Generis. And then he went to form another group called kind of like a super group. He has this thing where he always gets like the best people of other groups and then gets together with them, plays for like 2 years, gets tired of them, and then he just leaves. He's crazy, like he's insane. We can
so
get into
I'm
that
learning.
later.
Yeah, so I'm learning.
But he formed another super group called Por Su Gieco that had a guy from the pop background called Porchetto, Sui Generis, so him and Nito Mestre, Leon Gieco, a guy like used to play folk, and the first female voice that he ever worked with called Maria Rosa Llorio, who of course at the time, like she didn't get her name featured in the band.
Because patriarchy and...
Exactly. Yeah. But he ended up marrying Maria Rosa Llorio, and they broken up years ago, but it's the only, like it's the mother of his only child.
Okay.
He then went on to form another group called La Máquina de Hacer Pájaros, which, controversial opinion, is not my favorite.
Why?
It's too experimental. Like he went nuts. And like there's this one song called Hipercandombe. I think it's like 7 minutes long or something like that. And it just sounds. And I'm like, this is too much for me. Like I love this guy, but maybe I'm not that. Yeah.
Do you think it's bad, or
no?
I think bad for him.
I think it's great. But it's just not a genre that I'm interested in listening.
Okay,
like,
that's
it's
fine.
just that I think it's amazing. The people that love that kind of like music, more progressive, experimental music, love that album.
Okay.
I'm more like, this is not for me. I like more his rock side.
A little bit more melody and structure to what.
Yeah, exactly.
Understood.
He then did another group called Serushiran, which is like people in Argentina and like reviewers in Latin America and everything call that band like the Argentinian Beatles.
Okay, yeah.
Because of what they did, and how they created music and the way that they approach like new sounds. And there's like this thing that basically, like a few reviewers and Rolling Stone magazine always say like, if you wanted to like understand how the music that we listen today in Argentina was like brought up and who like started it, you need to go to Serushiran and Sui Generis, and that's how you find the sounds. They broke up in 1982, and that's where he released his first solo album, which is a double album called Peluca Telefónica, which was a soundtrack to a movie, and then Yendo de la Cama Living, which basically means that he was going through his bed to the living room.
Yeah.
Because that's what he was doing. He was like, he went crazy. He locked himself in his flat, and he recorded an album about being locked in a flat.
Fair enough.
And then we come 1983, finally, Clics Modernos.
Yes.
The album I chose. It's a really important album to me because it was the first album I ever heard of Charly García. My mom played a song of this album when I was, I want to say 10, 11 years old. It's a song that every single Argentinian person knows. It's called Los Dinosaurios.
Yes.
It's a song about the Argentinian dictatorship that happened between 1976 to 1983. So this album and his first solo album both came out in the last 2 years of the dictatorship. And there's like this saying, I don't remember the name of the historian, but there's this historian guy that says like, if all books about the last few decades of Argentina burned down, you could still listen to Charly García discography and learn what happened.
Wow.
And learn the history of Argentina.
Do you feel that's an accurate representation?
I think it is. I think it's 100% like that. He is so good at capturing what's happening in Argentina and just put it into words. And also challenging the Argentinian people as well. His last album that he released literally a few months ago, the 11th of September, which is Teacher's Day in Argentina. And that's why he released it then, because he's like, I'm the teacher.
no ego there.
I think that album also reflects what's happening right now in Argentina, and it's insane because it's like 73 years old. Like, why are you still doing music?
The talent doesn't disappear. Like,
exactly.
Class is permanent. That's what it is. Though.
It is. So that's why I picked this album, because it was the first one. It was like my door into Charly García world.
And obviously, like, thank you for that. That was you are the historian, and but Charly García has played a massive part in your life, and you can kind of feel the passion that you have for him from listening to, was it Los Dinosaurios?
Yeah.
That you listened to first to now where you are such a passionate fan. What was that transition? Was it the music? Was it the thematic, like poignant nature of the music and the lyrics, or you just fell in love with the person?
Yeah.
What kind of took you from, okay, casual listener, found this song when young, to massive fan who understands kind of all the context behind him and follows him more than just as a musician, but as a person who's kind of important to the growth of your nation? I think there were like maybe like 2 to 3 turning points that I became more and more of a fan. I think my first introduction to him was that song, and I was captivated by the lyrics first. I'm always a person that first goes through the lyrics. I think that's why I like Taylor Swift as well. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do it. Yeah, I get it. I hear it.
And that happens with me in every single, like, there's some rap albums that I like, and even though I'm not a big fan of rap, I just listen to the words and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah. Understood.
So then, like, lyrics for me is always the first thing that comes to mind. So then that's what I first learned from him, and that's what first attracted me to his music. And then when I started high school around like 13, 14 years old, I like had like one music teacher that he basically wanted everyone to pick like one album and one artist or whatever, and we did like one class every Friday, just going around that album. And I picked Charly García just because I was like, I feel like I don't know that much, or I feel like there's more for me to learn. So what a great opportunity to have like a music teacher just kind of walk me through it.
Yeah.
And then he said, yeah, let's do Charlie, but let's do Seru Shiran, which is one of his bands. And that's when I got introduced to Seru Shiran, and I was like, oh, okay, so there's more than just like the rock kind of like crazy persona that Charlie is. And I got introduced to like Charlie musical genius.
Yeah.
And then the third kind of like milestone, I think, was when I got to uni. My first roommate, he was a massive Charlie fan, like massive, insanely. And he was also a really talented pianist, and he had a piano in our room. And he used to play Charlie songs all day. And at first I hated it.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't sound like a good pivotal moment.
No, at first I was like, I hate you. Like, can you please shut up? Like, we have exams. It's 3 a.m. in the morning on a Tuesday. Stop playing Los Dinosaurios on the piano. But then he kind of helped me like deconstruct the music and understand the theory. And then we both dive into like this loop of just like watching Charly García interviews for hours and hours. Like we were going all like every single YouTube video, everything, we saw it together. And then I was like, okay, that's it. Like this is it. This is my number one artist in the world.
I love that. We often have people on who say, oh yeah, I really like this artist, and you ask them why, and take a bit of coaxing to get out of them, and they don't really understand it, and that's not a bad thing. Like you can't necessarily pinpoint the reasons why something appeals to you, but as someone who kind of has, I don't have an obsessive personality or nature, but like when there's something that I get really locked into, I can give you the full breakdown as to why, and I can pinpoint the exact moments where it becomes a passion project for me. And that's kind of why the podcast started. This is what we do. It's because there is this connection that you can build with an artist and an album and a project that kind of transcends normal behavior. So I absolutely love that. You said about musical genius, and I think this is something that I kind of want to probe into a little bit more. Obviously, being a poor Spanish to non-Spanish speaker, the lyrics is something that I struggle to I obviously looked at translations and to understand the meanings of the songs, but like that can't be the first thing that can attract me. The piano in this album
is insane.
Is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And I think you mentioned in one of your notes that it was one of the intros to the songs. Which song was it? Do you remember?
That has like a piano.
Yeah, there was a piano.
It's Latino.
Oh, is it? Is actually
that starts with a big like deep note that does like doom, and then just like a light progression of chords. What that big note is in the background, which is something that Bach used to do a lot.
I was gonna say it's like theatrical. It's
he has classical training, like,
and it shines through, and that is, I think, it leads me on to the next question, which I know the answer before I ask it, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Is this like a musically good album? Is it?
It is.
It is
100%. It is. I think it's also an album that stands the test of time, which is so hard, especially when like us being young, we listen to old albums.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, this is a great album, but I know the sound is kind of wrong.
Yeah, and the techniques that they were using are outdated.
Or like this doesn't sound like something modern anymore. And I feel like you can still listen to this album, and then musically, it's still like a showstopper album. It still sounds modern. If you haven't listened to the album the first time you do, you're like, what are these sounds? Like, I don't understand what's going on. It has so many references to other types of like genres. It uses so many techniques that I think it's an excellent musical album.
I disagree.
No, thank you. Thank you for everything.
That's it. Cut the cameras. We're going, I'm done. I think it's magical. It's something that is, as a very kind of UK and US centric music listener, and that's something I'm changing more and more as I do this podcast and do random bits and bobs here and there, but that the thing you were mentioning of it being like, what are these sounds and like what are you listening to, I found really refreshing. I was like, there's very few things that I can kind of pinpoint in my own listening journey as a fan that are similar. And there are points like with the piano, I was like, okay, it gives me shades of Elton John, and then there were vocals where I was like, okay, this is a little bit like Queen, and then like you said, it's the his band were called kind of the Argentinian Beatles. You can hear the sort of experimental nature of that, but for me, as a project and as an album, there's very little kind of true comparisons that you can make to it. It's so unique in its like formation that I just couldn't stop listening to it.
It's addictive.
It's addictive, and it also isn't really what I was expecting. When I'd heard of Charly García in Argentina and kind of more recently, it's all the crazy rock and roll like stories, and
which he also has.
Which he has, of course, and like by all accounts, sounds like a madman.
Yes,
he sounds like a madman. But then you take this crazy lifestyle, and then you expect to hear something like super heavy and maybe quite like brash and harsh, and you get there and it's this really well thought out, melodic, beautiful piece of music. And obviously there are heavier bits, and it's still there's still that classic rock nature to it, but it was just a pleasure to listen to. What's your favorite song on the album?
That's hard. I was re-listening to it like this week, and then I feel like I would normally pick Los Dinosaurios just because of like it was like the first one I heard, like the sentiment to it or whatever. But then as I was listening to it, I realized that there's another song that I think is so good.
Okay.
And that it's just like, I think I could like keep on listening to it, because every now and then I get tired of Los Dinosaurios. I think because it got overplayed on my high school years, and like it's also like whenever we study like Argentinian history, the teacher always is like, oh, now let's listen to Los Dinosaurios. Like, we get it.
Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah.
So then you get kind of tired of it. So I would say I think my favorite song on the album besides that one is Vangate ese defecto.
Okay.
Which is a song that basically talks about how hard it is to accept being normal. And this is a topic that he revisits in every single album that he ever does. There's another song in another album that he says something along the line of I try to feel normal, but I still feel abnormal all the time. Like that's something that he always revisits. And then in Vangate ese defecto, he has a few lines that he says like, it's not your fault that your nose doesn't match your face. Even if he literally says like, even if you fix your teeth, girl, you're still gonna look weird. Like he talks about like all this, and like you can try and change all of this, but you're still gonna be not normal, and that's okay, because normal is boring.
100%.
Basically.
Does what is normal? Does it exist
exactly.
in that sense? So
then I think, and again the lyrics are great, but then the instruments in Vangate ese defecto are insane. Like he has like a bunch of layers, and then I think one thing that's important to know is that the Spotify's version is actually not as good as the album actually sounded in vinyl, because when they did the remastered to upload it digital, they kind of like screw some part of the recordings, so then it still sounds great, and it's the only version I ever listened to because I don't have vinyl sadly. But I'm like thinking like, oh, this is a great song, and like when you listen to it with headphones, you hear like something happening on your left ear, something happening on your right ear, something in the middle, and then I'm like, I wonder how this would have sound on vinyl. Someone listening to the first time in
it's an
1983.
audio experience, like it's taking you different places, left, right, and center, and there is a thought process going into it as like, how should this sound when somebody's listening to it? So where do I take things out and bring things in?
Exactly, and he's so good at that, and he's so good at also making you, even if like he has in this album, there's a couple of songs, especially like the last one, Ojos de Videotape, that the end it's just like maybe like a 15-20 second of just like instruments and musical pieces or whatever. And then you could be like, oh, this part is kind of boring, like I want to skip the song and get to the next one. But he's also telling a story in the way that he layers his instruments when he decides to like bring some instrument back or take one away. And then I think that's why, going back to the point of like musical genius and how this is like a great musical piece, I think that Bangate's Effect is another good example of how he uses layers and rhythm just to kind of like tell the story besides just the obvious lyrics.
100%. And it's funny you say Ojos de Videotape, because that is one of my top 3 of the album.
Yeah,
and
it's so good.
And again, it boils back to that point of where I'm looked into the sonic side of it and how it actually sounds to me. And that last maybe minute and a half where it goes into the instrumental, it's like it's almost like the credits of an album. Like the way that it fades out is it's so soft and kind of like pacifying. You sort of like slip back into it and you're like,
yeah, definitely.
Oh, album's done now.
Yeah. And a funny thing about Ojos de Videotape, I have 2 fun tips about it. Basically, the first one is that it's the only song that has an acoustic piano at the beginning. Because one would think like, oh, Los Dinosaurios, because he has like this piano
dramatic part,
but no, that's like electronic piano. He only used the acoustic one on Ojos de Videotape. And then in the end, in that musical part, there's one progression of notes that he uses in one point. There's actually a sample of another of his songs when he was with Seru Shiran, a song called Peperina, which is like one of the best songs that they ever done when they were a band. And he kind of referenced that there's like a bridge or like a few 5, 6, 7 notes that in Peperina kind of gets played over and over and over, and then they build the song around that. And then he takes those 7 notes and puts them in the end of Ojos de Videotape. And
that's a big flex. Be able to sample your own massive blockbuster song in a new
one.
Yeah.
And he's always doing that. There's this one interview that he once did when he said, I think he was kind of taking the piss at the interviewer, but the interviewer was like, oh, what do you listen to when you're at home? And he says, I only listen to 2 artists, the Beatles and Charly García. And I was like, yeah, fair enough.
Fast. No. I mean, if you've got it, flaunt it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane. I am intrigued to know a little bit more about like the man himself, because obviously we've spoken a bit about like this crazy lifestyle and the rock and roll, and I've heard from you a few mental stories. So maybe top 1 or 2 like landmark crazy Charly García moments.
Yeah, well, I think probably every Argentinian is gonna agree, and the top number 1 is when he jumped from I want to say 7th floor. At this point I don't remember which floor it was.
So
but
crazy.
Yeah, so he jumped from the 7th floor of a hotel in Cordoba into a swimming pool. It was right after he did a concert, and then basically he destroyed the whole like stage. Like he destroyed all the instruments, everything, and then he left. He played for 45 minutes. He left for an hour. He came back, played for another 10 minutes, and then just destroyed all the instruments and left. So then the police went to look for him at the hotel. It's been kind of like, oh, we're gonna detain you because you broke like private property. Yeah. And there's this anecdote that basically the police knocked on his door, and he was like, "Who is that?" And like the guy replied like, "The police." And then Charlie said, "And why is it my fault that you didn't finish school?" And then
that's so cold.
Yeah. And then he opened the door to his balcony, and he just jumped into the pool, and you can see in the video that he's swimming with his hands like this. And then there was a camera. There were a couple of like cameras inside the hotel. So then there's the like you can see the recording of him falling into the pool, and then they break into the pool, and then he's just swimming. And then they do like, Charlie wanted to jump over the 7th floor, like what's going on? And he's like, oh, I just felt like taking a swim, but I didn't want to go downstairs because the police was there. And they said, but everything's fine because you see me, like I was flying, I was swimming with my hands, I was like changing the direction of my body. And I'm like, what do you mean you were flying?
You're falling with style.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess that's one.
That's insane.
And then top number 2 is kind of like a sad one as well. He was working on an album with Luis Alberto Spinetta, which is, I would say, just like if Charlie is the father of rock, he's the mother of rock, basically. Like those are the 2 main artists that built the foundations for what we listen to today in Argentina. And they were working on an album together, which would have been just
world
dream.
ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they got together in the studio. They were working, and then they were in different vibes. Charlie was at the height of his cocaine consumption and like drugs and rock and roll and whatever, doing crazy hours. And then Spinetta, he was always just like a family guy. He had like 3 kids. He was married. He loved to bake like bread for his kids in the morning. Like he was a completely different
opposite of the just.
So then they got together in the studio. They were trying to work it out, whatever. And then they got together one day and recorded the only song that we actually have that they did together, which is called Rezo por Vos. Which is a song that talks about this one line that says like I set fire to my curtains. Like it talks about fire. It talks about like certain stuff from fire or whatever. And while they were recording that, Charlie's flat caught fire while they were recording a song about stuff getting fired. So then
these things shouldn't happen in real life. Like the story behind every time we speak about Charly García, I'm just like, this can't be real.
Yeah.
Like, his life is insane.
It's insane. So yeah, and so then they call him like, hey, your flight's on fire, come back. And that was when Spinetta was like, I think this is a sign, let's just stop the recording. So they only have one song together.
Which is a shame,
It
because
is.
my controversial Argentine classic rock opinion is that as much as I love Clics Modernos, I think Arto is potentially like a close to 10 out of 10 album.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I believe in perfect albums, but as someone who's not necessarily like naturally a rock fan and obviously not a native Spanish speaker, so very much a novice and new to the space. Well, I would say that I'm knowledgeable, but let me give myself some credit. But Pescado Rabioso blows my fucking mind.
Yes, it's insane.
It blows my fucking mind. And this album in particular, I know you recommended as one of your highly recommended. Can you tell me a little bit about this album and maybe a bit more about Spinetta and that kind of I don't know, comparison between the two and how their journeys went?
Yeah. So I think the funny thing is I only got into Spinetta when I got to uni, maybe I want to say. Like I wasn't a big Spinetta fan.
Okay.
Which is super controversial in Argentina, I think, because I think there's like 3 people that everyone is a fan of: Charly García, Spinetta, and Gustavo Cerati, which is kind of like the son of rock and roll.
Yeah.
We've
got the whole family
tree.
Yeah,
because he was younger. He died in around his 40s, sadly. But so I got into a Spinetta when I was older. Like, of course, I knew the hit songs because they're always playing everywhere. But the first kind of album that I sat down and listened to in full was Arto, which is an insane album to start with.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
It's almost like, where'd you go from here?
Yeah, it's like, okay. And I got into it because I was reading a book, kind of like based in Argentina. It was like a fiction. And then they mentioned the song Todas las hojas son del viento, which is, I think, the first song in the album. And I was like, oh, I love when there's some books that mention like random songs, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna listen to it, so then I can kind of get the sense of what the characters are feeling and listening to. And then I listened to that song and I was like, I don't care about this book, I'm gonna go into the album. So Spinetta, he did again a bunch of super groups, and what I like about Spinetta is that he had like completely defined eras or like groups of years where he played like this specific kind of like music, and then he went into something different, and then he got more progressive and experimental, and then he went back to just like a guy with a guitar and a beautiful song. He's considered the poet of Argentina. Like there's like this common thing that everyone says like no one writes lyrics as Spinetta did. And then I think the first kind of things I've heard from him were like his first couple of albums. He was so much more rock and roll. It was like heavy guitars, like heavy drums and everything. And then I wasn't kind of into that. I was like, it's
a bit much.
It's a bit much for me. I got later as I grew older, I got into more rock and roll stuff. But at that time, when I was in high school, that wasn't for me. And then when I got to uni, like again my roommate. He was also a big fan of Spinetta.
Shout out your roommate.
He's great. So then he introduced me to Arto by Pecado Rabioso, which is the first, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first one that he was doing as a solo artist. It still hasn't like a name of a band, but it was the first one that he was on top of everything, like lyrics, music, everything.
Full creative control.
Yeah, exactly. I think what explains perfectly what his approach was for Arto is that if you look at the vinyl, it's not shaped as a square or as a circle. So it's just like a green thing, it's like random cut.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and I think that's just the definition of what he was trying to do. He was like, I'm gonna make something that doesn't fit the mold, and try to challenge everyone to hear this. And then my favorite song in the album is the first one I heard was Todas las Canciones del Viento, but my favorite one is Bajan.
So for me, it's between Bajan and Las Habladurías del Mundo. That song.
That's like it's just it's insane.
It's this. So the only way I can describe it is, I got to the end of the album, listened to that song, replayed it, and then replayed the whole album. Yeah, and I was like, it makes you come back again. Yeah, and that as on the podcast we have a very strong belief in intros and outros dictating how, like, you it's not the be all and end all. Like, you still have to have a good album in between. But if you can start and end an album in a strong way to kind of bookend your project, that is what keeps people coming back. That is what you're leaving the right first impression and the right last impression,
which I think these two artists are great at doing.
They're really
they know how to. And then, like, I think they're also, what I like about both Spinetta and Charly García is that they think about the whole overall like listener experience. The order of the song is not random. Like, they really think of like which song is gonna play last, which one's gonna play first, what's gonna play in the middle. Like, I think I recently got into this thing when I'm like, okay, if an artist releases an album, then I have to listen to it in order.
Yes,
like,
as it
not
should
going
be.
To shuffle or whatever.
No, shuffling. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, but
shuffling on albums is like psychotic to me.
Yeah,
like it's like reading a book from the middle.
Exactly.
Like, why would you do that?
But in a world where we are so used to playlists, it's so hard because you get the singles in the middle and that's it.
Yeah, but
like, then when it goes into the album, you're like, oh, there's a whole story that you're telling me that I was missing.
All you have to do is just press play. Like, I get it. Not everybody has vinyls. Not everybody's gonna like look for a physical copy of the album to listen to. But like, when it first comes out, like just play
just
it
once.
Just once.
Then you can pick the ones that you like,
of course,
and make your own thing.
If you hear the singles, that's fine. And maybe you don't like listening to albums in full, but don't go through all the effort of going onto the album. To listen to the album and then click it into shuffle to doesn't make sense to me. Make sense to me.
Yeah, it's insane. And I think both Spinetta and Charly are so good at doing that. And then Charly in Clics Modernos, for example, he has his most like danceable song, the one that's like that he introduces it as a song to dance when he did the live show at the end of 1983. The song that comes right after that one is Los Dinosaurios.
Yeah.
So he's like, let me give you the most danceable song ever, and then let me break your heart.
Yeah. And it's meaningful. Like
exactly.
It makes it a more intriguing listen, because it's forcing you as a listener to like confront what each song is telling you and making you feel.
And I think same thing happens in Arto with Spinetta. Like, I think is Cantate is the last. I think it's almost the last song.
Yeah.
And then the last song comes, Las Habladurías. I think that makes it great. Bajan as well. Like the whole creation of songs is just insane. And I'm like, how did you come up with this? Like, I need.
How do you go from like a chord and then get to here? It's
insane.
It's why I love doing this, because you find gems like this and you're like, oh, I would have absolutely no other reason to have listened to this album, and now I listen to it probably once a month. Since
I think it's great.
One question on the supergroup side of things.
Yeah.
Like, do you prefer, if we keep it with Charlie. Do you prefer the solo music or the bands?
Oh, this is like picking up a favorite child.
This is all we do here. This is all we do here, and there's always a favorite.
Yeah, there's always a favorite. Yeah.
Are you the favorite child?
I'm an only child. So maybe I'm not the favorite. No, I think the answer changed from what it used to be to what it is now. I think now I would pick Charlie as a solo artist versus a supergroup, just because. And I guess I got to that point right when I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago that the Beatles documentary Get Back was released, and I watched that because I'm also a big Beatles fan. And then I watched that, and after that ended, I was like, okay, so they were all amazing individually, and if they weren't together, then they couldn't have made the music that they made and changed history of rock, pop music, or whatever. So then, after I realized that, I was like, I think the same thing happens with supergroups that Charlie makes. Like they're all great in their own individual way. So then, yeah, I love when they get together and they do like massive, impressive music. But I think, at least for me, it's more of a standout when it's just him doing it. And like in Clics Modernos, for example, he plays all the instruments except for the bass.
I didn't know that.
He plays all the instruments. Insane. Again, the battery. So the drums, he used like Roland
drum machine.
Yeah, drum machine that he just like acquired when he went to New York. Because he first goes to New York where he recorded the album. He recorded it in Electric Lady Studios, so Jimi Hendrix Studios, with a producer. I don't remember his name, but he was the producer of The Clash, Ramones, kind of that. And then he arrives to the studios and he knocks on the door. He didn't have an appointment, and the guy at the door is like, I don't think you can afford this. And he pulls out like a bag of money. And they're like, okay, come on in.
Yeah.
And then way, sir. Yeah. And then he first like tries a few drummers and a few people playing the guitar, and then he decides like, yeah, they're great, but they just don't fit the sound that I want. So then what he does is that he plays all the instruments, gets the drum machine, and uses the drum machine for all of the songs. And in like every now and then in one song, maybe he had like another guitar player just coming in and redoing what he did. But like they weren't making up the notes. It was what Charlie already did. He already recorded. He was like, maybe I need someone else to do it because I've been doing it too much, or to see if they have a different flair to it, or whatever. And then the only other person that he had that was, besides him also playing instrument, was Pedro Aznar, who is the bass player, who he was also a part of Seru Shiran, so the supergroup.
Okay.
And I think once you listen to that, and to the point of like why I prefer him, Pedro Aznar is a great bass player. Like he's amazing. His solo music is really good as well. But then when you hear him playing in Clics Modernos or in Seru Shiran, you hear him sounding so different. And then I'm like, okay, you're a great player, but who is making you sound like this?
It's the music that is elevating. Like obviously you have the talent.
He has the talent. He's the best bass player in Argentina. But it's the notes that another guy composed that makes you sound like this.
Yeah. Understood. I've adored this. This has been sick just to see like one, your knowledge, and two, like how much it genuinely means to you. Like you can tell that it's an artist that has played a key part in like just your life, regardless of kind of the listening and how your kind of tastes have changed. Like it's someone that means a lot to you, and that's kind of what we're looking for. Before we round off, I do always like to jump into like kind of the guilty pleasure side and karaoke and things like that. I changed the word guilty pleasures because listen to what you want to listen to. Life's short. Don't be guilty about it. But are there any artists that you listen to now that are maybe a far departure from kind of this style of music, or something that is taking your fancy that is maybe unexpected?
I would say, well, you mentioned at the beginning, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, so I think that also kind of sets up like I like pop music in general. But I've been recently listening to that I actually saw that you kind of talk about and mentioned it on the podcast before is Kneecap.
Oh,
I got so obsessed with them.
oh,
I'm
Kneecap
like-
are the fucking truth.
And I'm
They are-
like, I don't even speak Irish.
Yeah.
I don't even speak English as a first language. Why am I so obsessed with this?
yeah,
And it just blew my mind. And then I got into a rabbit hole of watching every single interview they ever made,
yes,
every single live performance.
yes. I
Um,
imagine you've watched the film.
of course I watched the film. That's how I got into it. I saw the film and I was like, this music is so
The
good.
soundtrack
Like,
is crazy.
yeah, like who made the soundtrack?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's them.
It's them. And then you're like, oh wait, and you're playing yourselves. Oh,
yeah.
it's-
And I was like, what's going on? And it's just, so I guess, I
Great
say it's not
shout
guilty
out,
pleasure
dude.
because you shouldn't be guilty about
and
anything.
that
But
is-
that's something I think it fits with me, Charly Garcia, being
Yeah.
that Taylor Swift lover.
Mm.
And you see me walking in the morning like 8:30 a.m. going to the office. I'm probably gonna be listening to Kneecap.
Wait, what's the song that like top of your list for Kneecap? Just out of interest.
Oh, I don't remember the name.
Go get it
but
up, get it
let
up.
me check
Let me
it.
get
'Cause
it.
it's-
This that makes you so. I love Kneecap. I made it one of my albums of the week a couple weeks ago, and I can't understand why I like it so much. I think they call themselves a hip hop group, but I don't know if they are a hip hop group
I
really.
have no
Like
idea what they
there's
actually are.
garage, there's bass line. It all gets a bit like heavy and like ravey, and and half of it's in fucking Irish. And
Yeah, and I have no idea what they're
I
talking
have
about.
no idea what they're talking about. Even when they're speaking English, I get a bit confused. Like but
it is hard.
I can't express how talented they are, and also
Yeah.
the idea, because watching the film, and if everybody hasn't watched the film, we won't spoil it, but there is everything that they're talking about. Obviously, it's all dramatized, and there's elements of fiction in there, and I love that in their interviews they're always asked like how much of it is true, and then they're like, well, that's for you to decide. Like always leaving a little bit of mystery to keep the intrigue and interest there. But like the story starts from 2017.
Yeah.
The blow up that they had was 2022 really, and that was within their kind of locality. They're only really getting kind of wider acclaim now, post film. But you do a couple of shows, you start to gain some popularity on social media, and then you end up working on and starring in a film that wins the best film at the Cannes Film Festival. Like, oh no, it was Sundance. Best, like, that doesn't happen.
No,
so
it's
they
insane.
they are incredibly talented guys, and I think sometimes the look and the persona that they give off, and that they probably have to an extent, kind of lets people underestimate the thought process and the like intelligence that's gone into going from point A to point B in 7 years. Like it's they're great. Go and listen to Fine Art.
Yeah.
Great album.
Great album.
What
Sick in the
song?
Head.
Sick in the Head. Yes.
It's so good.
Such a good song.
And I think, as you said, I think it comes also like, it kind of goes back to Charlie, but I'm also so interested when an artist has a political opinion and a political view, and they're not afraid to immerse themselves in the political context and history of what's happening within their own like context, country, social life, whatever. And even though kind of like the Irish struggles is like foreign to me because I'm not from there, I'm not even from this country, so I like we don't cover that in like Argentinian history or whatever. Like I only know a few things about it. Just listening to like them using this, what I think is, even though as you say they call themselves like a rap hip hop group, I think they have like other genres that they reference, but using or picking like this genre it was kind of born as a way of also portraying the struggles of different cultures and groups of people in different countries, and just picking that and kind of making it their own with adding the Irish language to it. I just think it's so clever.
Yeah, it is.
And the sounds that they picked and how to do it, and when you listen to the whole album, they have like this whole like the intro, like the news part in the middle.
Skits, and
I think like that's insane that you actually like you chose that and you put it in there. That's so clever. That's so interesting. Such a like a new sound as well. So yeah, I think they're my number one now.
Love that. I think as we've been speaking, something that struck me and maybe is a tenuous link, but a link between kind of like Charly Garcia and Kneecap is there is that element in very different ways, but that like non-conformist
100%
mentality that comes through. And I think as I've gotten older and kind of have started to make my way in life in general, I think it's very easy to slip into the norm and the classic and the what everybody else is doing. So when there is something that just steps completely outside of that, is unashamedly not trying to be that, especially in music, but I think in all art, it's something that appeals to me. But it can be quite, it makes you take notice.
Yeah,
And it can be regardless of genre, but that element of individuality, I guess, is quite stark. And the Kneecap have got that in spades, and it definitely relates to Charly García massively throughout, not just kind of the start of his career and when he was kind of becoming, but even now when you look at the impact he's having as a 71-year-old man or 73-year-old man. Like it's crazy. And then final thing from me, because I love it, and I know that you could kill it on karaoke if you if you wanted to. What is your go-to karaoke tune?
I would say, I think I have two. One is that I'm really good at Nicki Minaj verse in Monster.
Everybody knows those bars. I don't understand. I can't rap that. Not that I can rap, but I just don't get it. Everybody's like it's.
Oh, it's just it just comes straight out of my mind. Like it's just like every now. I mean, it's clear because but it's so funny because I'm like, I know, washing the dishes, and I'm like, pull up in the monster of the Milk Gangsta, and it's just like, what's going on? Like, why am I rapping Nicki Minaj song? But I would never pick that one because you have to do all the kind of like the two previous like Jay-Z's and Kanye, which they're also great, but like it's kind of boring for a karaoke. So then I would say I would probably pick Breaking Free from High School Musical.
Classic.
It's a classic one. Everyone knows the lyrics. There's always another person who's gonna jump in to kind of like the Gabriela voice. I think it has. Yeah, I think it also builds a perfect story within the same song. Like 'cause as the song progresses, you can feel how they're getting more comfortable with each other, and the music kind of changes, and they have a little bit more instruments. So I'm like, it's good. That I think that will also reflect in the room. So it's a good kind of like first, second, third song to start singing karaoke. You know, at the beginning it's kind of everyone's shy or whatever. If you start with that one, then everyone gets comfortable right away.
It's a very well thought out answer.
Actually,
it's a very well. I can't hate on it. It's. I don't know if I'm going to keep this in, but there was a point in time when I was at uni, I was doing musical theatre, and then I was playing American football alongside it, and I was constantly trying to like juggle rehearsals and practice. Yeah,
you were drunk.
I call myself the Black Dog.
You're like, Mom, do you think I can be both?
Yeah, I've got so much about me. And everyone's like, you need to stop calling yourself that. And I was like, yeah, probably.
I have my head in the game.
Yeah. Bouncing basketballs around. Oh, funny. Fuck it, staying in. Definitely staying in. Thank you so much, Lauti. I've had a really fun time. I hope you enjoyed coming on. And
I loved it.
I mean, like I said, we have all had the opportunity to sit back and listen and let somebody who really knows their artist kind of give us a lesson. You were the historian. You were the historian today.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed it. And I hope you at home enjoyed listening to it. I think what we're trying to do, and hopefully there'll be more episodes like this in the future where we're going to be delving into albums that you probably wouldn't have heard of previously. And I think if you haven't heard of Charly García, I would highly recommend. If you haven't heard of Pescado Rabioso, I would highly recommend. Thank you so much. Peace out.